Hello, dear learners. Welcome to the MOOC on Rural Development in India. Dear learners, in the previous unit, we have discussed the importance of agriculture in rural development, highlighting its role in employment generation, income creation, food security, and overall socio-economic transformation of rural areas. As we all know that agriculture is the foundational sector that sustains rural livelihood and support economic stability at the grassroots level. However, with increasing population pressure on land, declining farm sizes, and growing income risk in the sector of agriculture, it has become evident that agriculture alone cannot meet the rising livelihood aspiration of rural households. So in this context, in this unit, basically we focuses on the importance of rural non-farm economy. We can also refer as rural non-farm employment. So what is actually rural non-farm economy or rural non-farm employment? It refers to all income generating economic activity undertaken in rural areas that is outside or away from the agriculture. As defined by Hegblad et al. 2013, RNFE includes self-employment and wage employment, covering formal and informal, regular and casual, full-time and part-time activities in the sectors that includes rural manufacturing, construction, trade, transport, and other services. Thus, RNFE represent a broad and heterogeneous segment of the rural economy, encompassing both traditional household-based activities as well as modern service sector employment. It is particularly important in rural India, where small landholding and landlessness limit exclusive dependence on agriculture or farming. So, this non-farm sector harmonizes agriculture by providing alternative and supplementary sources of employment and income. And thus it reduces the dependence on agriculture, which result in absorption of surplus labor from the farm sector. As we all know that we can refer agriculture sector as the base for rural economic activity. And upon this base, the non-farm sector builds and thus it promotes diversification, value addition, entrepreneurship, and structural transformation in rural economics. So the reason behind this transformation of rural people towards non-farm activities and the role of both the sectors in promoting economic development, special emphasis is placed on Indian scenario, where agriculture continues to employ a large share of the workforce, while the non-farm sector increasingly contributes to the national income. So, dear learners, in this discussion, basically based on established theories of development and evidence from India, so that we can draw a standard understanding of the interlinkage between the farm and non-farm sector and the growing status of non-farm economy in rural India. So let us first have a look on the difference between the farm and non-farm sector. What is actually farm sector? The farm sector refers to all economic activities that are directly related to agriculture and allied field. This includes, we have already discussed in the previous unit, this includes crop production, horticulture, plantation crop, livestock rearing, fisheries, forestry, and agricultural services. The primary objective of the farm sector are food production, raw material supply for agro-based industry, as well as livelihood support for rural population. As you all know that agriculture is basically characterized by dependency on natural factor such as seasonality, relatively low labor productivity, predominance of small and marginal holdings in developing countries like India. So this is about the farm sector. Now coming to the non-farm sector. As we are discussing about non-farm sector in rural development, these non-farm sectors includes, I have already mentioned about the activities under the non-farm sector. It includes all economic activities other than agriculture. What happened in rural area, if we see in case of the rural area, it covers manufacturing, mining, construction, trade and commerce, transport, storage, communication, financial services, community and social personal services. Rural non-farm activities may range from small-scale households enterprises and cottage industry to modern services and rural-based industries. The non-farm sector is generally associated with higher productivity, greater income diversification, and reduced vulnerability to agricultural risks. As the agriculture or farming is dependent on the weather condition, there is high risk of uncertainty. But in the non-farm sectors, basically, it reduces the chances or vulnerability to that kind of risks or uncertainty which are available in agriculture or farming. Therefore, from the above discussion, we can say that the key difference between the two sectors is like the farm sector is heavily based on climatic condition, while the non-farm sector relies more on capital, skills, technology, etc. Employment in agriculture is often seasonal and informal, whereas non-farm employment tends to more regular and diversified. In terms of contribution to the national income, the share of agriculture usually declines with development, even though it may continue to employ a large proportion of the workforce. So these differences form the basis for structural transformation in an economy. Now let us discuss the rural non-farm economy and structural transformation. So what happens over the past 3 decades, rural employment in India has undergoing a significant structural transformation. As you can refer to the table, that in the table the proportion of you can see that the proportion of workers engaged in agriculture declined from 64.6% in 1993-94 to 46.1% in 2023-24, while the share of rural non-farm employment increased from 35.4% to 53.9% during the same period. So this shift reflects the growing livelihood diversification in rural areas, and it indicates a gradual transition away from the agriculture towards non-farm economic activities. Although what happened, a large proportion of India's workforce continues to depend on agriculture, this pattern has been undergoing change in the recent year. So in the last decade, land-based livelihood of small and marginal farmers have become increasingly unsustainable. Why? Because it is restricted by the limited land holdings, which are often inadequate to meet the household food needs and also to provide fodder for livestock. Consequently, rural households are turning towards non-farm activities such as manufacturing and agro-processing, commodity trading in place of cash crop cultivation or wage employment outside agriculture to supplement their incomes. So, we have already discussed the definition. Still, what is the rural non-farm employment? It may be defined as all in income generating activities in rural areas that involve wage work or self employment and are not which are not directly related to agriculture, and these non farm activities play a crucial role in stimulating local economic growth, and therefore their promotion is widely regarded as an important strategy for poverty alleviation and livelihood diversification in rural area. So, dear learner, when we are discussing about the rural non-farm economy or rural non-farm employment, we must need to emphasize on the term diversification. According to Warren Buffett's well-known advice, what is that? To not put all your eggs in one basket. So, this implies the capture the rationale behind livelihood diversification in rural areas. So, diversification may be defined as the process through which the rural household build an increasingly varied portfolio of activities and assets in order to ensure survival and enhance their standard of living. Rather than relying on a single source of income, households distribute their labor, their resources across multiple activities. And such choices are shaped by exposure to risk, vulnerability, and uncertainty in their economic environment. So, relating to RNFE, we need to mention about this diversification. This livelihood diversification can occur through both agricultural as well as non-agricultural pathway. So, agricultural diversification already we have discussed that involves practices such as cultivating multiple crops or shifting towards high value crops. Non agricultural diversification, on the other hand, includes engagement in small enterprises, casual wage labor, migration of other non farm sources of income. So, in this context, employment diversification has become a central livelihood strategy in rural areas. So, this diversification basically offers various important benefits. First, it can significantly raise rural income as non-farm wages are often higher than agricultural wages. Second, it reduces the dependency on climate sensitive agriculture and provide greater security against increasing climate uncertainty. Then the diversification can help moderate distress driven migration by creating alternative income opportunity migrations, that is from the rural to urban areas. Then it allows households to cope with imperfections in factors market. For example, if we say like limited access to credit make compel household to undertake supplementary activities to generate capital for their primary occupation. So at the same time, the diversification highlights the growing challenges of employment generation in the rural non-farm economy. The widening gap between the number of new entrants into a rural labor force and a limited capacity of agriculture to absorb them suggests that agricultural growth alone cannot meet future employment needs. So, in the absence of sufficient rural non-farm opportunity, migration to urban areas become increasingly inevitable as cities tend to offer a wider range of employment options. So, understanding why an increasing number of rural households are diversifying into a non-farm sector is therefore very much crucial. So livelihood, as we are discussing about diversification or livelihood diversification, this diversification is commonly explained through two broad processes, that is distress push and demand pull factors. This is according to the Davis and PH 2000s. So, distress push diversification occurs when households are compelled to seek non-farm employment due to inadequate or declining opportunity in agriculture. And in contrast, the demand pool diversification arises when rural households are able to take advantage of new and more attractive opportunity outside the farming or agriculture. So if you see what are the distress push factor, it includes population growth, declining returns to farming, reduced farm productivity, degradation of the natural resources, temporary shocks, like in case of COVID-19, we can cite an example of COVID-19, then limited access to farm input markets. In the other hand, what are the demand pull factors? Demand pull factors includes higher returns to labor and investment in the rural non-farm sector, lower risk compared to farming, the need for cash to meet household objective, as well as availability of economic opportunity often linked to social advantage in urban centers or outside the rural areas. So, the appeal of urban life, particularly among younger rural populations, also plays an important role in attracting workers towards non-farm or off-farm employment. So, now let us have a look about the contribution, how this non-farm sector contribute to economic development. So, we can mention its contribution in the employment, in the areas like employment generation, then income diversification and poverty reduction, then structural transformation and growth, reduction in rural urban migration. So these are the contribution of non-farm sector in rural economy. Now let us have a look in the contribution of the non-farm sector to the farm sector. How this non-farm sector contribute to the farm sector? As we all know that the farm, and we cannot separate the farm and non-farm sector because they are interdependent. They function as two interdependent pillars of a economy. While farm or agriculture plays a crucial role in initiating economic development, the non-farm sector gradually becomes important in sustaining and in accelerating agricultural growth. So with economic progress, the farm sector increasingly relies on the non-farm sector for inputs, services, markets, and technological support. The major contribution of the non-farm sector to the farm sector can be discussed as supply of modern farm inputs. That is one of the most significant contribution of the non-farm sector to the agriculture is the provision of modern farm inputs. So agriculture productivity cannot be enhanced without the use of machinery, irrigation, then equipment, other high yielding varieties. So these inputs are manufactured and supplied by the non-farm sectors. Next is employment opportunity for surplus farm labor. Mechanization and technological progress in agriculture often reduce the demand for labor, and thus it leads to the displacement of surplus worker. So the non-farm sector absorbs the excess labor by providing alternative employment opportunity. Then creation of demand for farm products. What happened? The non-farm sector provides a stable and expanding market for agricultural produces. As non-farm industries and services grow, they generate increased demand for food grains and other agricultural commodities. So, this rising demand encourages farmers to produce surplus for the market, and thus they can strengthen the commercial orientation of the agriculture. Then next is supply of consumer goods to the rural population. So it is seen that with the development of agriculture, farmers' incomes rise and their standard of living also improves. And this leads to diversification in consumption patterns and also increased demand for consumer goods such as clothing, household items, appliances, and other comfort and luxury goods. So these goods are produced by the non-farm sectors. And the availability of such goods motivates farmers to enhance productivity and income and thereby indirectly contributing to the agricultural development. So next is development of infrastructure. The growth of agriculture depends heavily on infrastructure such as roads, electricity, irrigation facility, storage, and other health services. The non-farm sectors play a key role in creating and maintaining this infrastructure facility. Next is creation of an innovative and entrepreneurial environment. What happened? The expansion of non-farm sector promotes technological advancement, innovation, and skill development across the economy. And this innovative environment spreads to agriculture, and thus it encourages the adoption of modern farming techniques, improved management practices, and entrepreneurial initiative. So thus the interactions between farm and non-farm sector foster capital formation, technical know-how, and the emergence of an entrepreneurial class, all of which contributes to the long-term development of the farm sector and rural economy. Now, let us discuss the determinants of the growth of the non-farm economy in the context of India. The growth of non-farm economy is influenced by a range of economic, institutional, and socio-cultural factors, and the key determinants are like natural resources, the availability and accessibility of natural resources, which play an important role in shaping economic growth. However, growth is not determined by the mere presence of resources, but by how effectively and how sustainably they are utilized. In some cases, regions rich in natural resources may experience a resource scarce, where excessive dependence on resources, also resource extraction and exports also can limit the diversification and the development of value-added non-farm activities. Then next is quality of government and institutions. The performance of the non-farm economy is closely linked to the initiative of governance, policy implication, effective implication of policy, and institutional stability. Then next is the local physical infrastructure. So what are the physical infrastructure? These are basically roads, transport networks, electricity, and communication facility. And these are crucial determinant of non-farm sector growth. Well-developed infrastructure reduces transaction cost, improves market access, and facilitates the establishment and expansion of rural enterprises. And thus it promotes the growth of non-farm economy. Then the next is proximity to the urban centers. It is obvious that the growth of rural non-farm activities is strongly influenced by proximity to the urban centers. Close rural-urban linkage enable easier marketing of rural product access to urban consumer, and diffusion of technology and information. Urban demand also stimulates the rural enterprises that supplies goods and services to nearby town and cities. Then the ethnicity, gender, and cultural factors. So, social cultural factors such as ethnicity, caste, gender, and cultural norms significantly affect participation in non-farm activities. In a diverse society like India, differences in region, caste, and social practices that influence occupational choices and the extent of diversification, etc. We can cite some example like households from socially disadvantaged groups often face barriers in accessing better paid non-farm employment. Similarly, although women play a central role in agriculture in developing countries, social norms and limited access to the asset, skills, and mobility restrict their participation in more remunerative non-farm activities. So, in the end, we can conclude that the farm and non-farm sectors are not isolated components of the economy, but are deeply interlinked and mutually reinforcing. While agriculture provides food, raw material, labor, capital, and markets to the non-farm sector, non-farm activity also supply inputs, technology, services, and employment opportunity that are crucial for agricultural development. So, in the Indian context, the expansion of this rural non-farm economy or non-farm sector is essential for addressing problems of low agricultural income, disguised unemployment, and rural poverty. Sustainable economic development, therefore, depends on strengthening farm non-farm linkage and promoting a balanced process of structural transformation. So, with this, I come to the end of today's lecture. Thank you.